Greetings and welcome back to yet another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Apollyon. This is the second time we've had him on a Daily Run, and I think he's a very interesting character in some regards, but I also think he's a very boring character in other regards. And at this time I've played him about 10 times in total, so not a lot, especially not a lot actually form a very constructive opinion, but from what I can tell he actually suffers from the same problem as other characters that have very good active items do. So for example, someone like Isaac, whenever you play Isaac you fall down into that rabbit hole of just using the same strategy over and over again. You're trying to save the D6, you're trying to reroll some bad items, sometimes even some good items, in hopes of getting some really good ones. You pick up certain items, you always skip certain items just because they're not the best way to go about things. And because you hold on to that D6 so much, you really don't have any room to explore with other active items, because why would you pick Shoop the Whoop Up when you have the D6, which means that any active item which isn't the D6 is an automatic reroll. And Apollyon is very similar in that sense that whenever you see an active item you don't have to make a decision, will I pick it up or will I just put it down, because you can always just suck it up and that effect gets added on top of your existing effects. And there's no reason why you would never do that, which means that whenever you play as Apollyon, it does tend to get just a bit samey, because you're kind of stacking to the void charges. Sometimes you won't use it intentionally because maybe the boss will drop an active item which you can suck up. And if you see a bad item, you don't even have to pick it up. With Apollyon, you even have the excuse of using your void item to suck it up and get some random stats. And sometimes actually that's beneficial. So he's a very similar character to Isaac, but I would say he's just a little bit, he offers a little bit less variety, because while you reroll bad items and active items, you get some good ones. Apollyon is much more in the sense that the effects you get on your active item are usually gonna be the same. And I don't mean the same as in that you're gonna get the same effects, but there isn't going to be much difference. You're either gonna get Head of Krampus, maybe some shield effects, maybe an item that gives you a Spirit Heart, or maybe a Black Heart. And those in total, I found that at least like out of 5 out of the 10 runs, I've had some of this or maybe a combination of these effects on my active item, which, well, that's not a bad thing at all, because obviously combining all of those is a really fun experience and there are some very interesting synergies. Most of the time what I feel happens is that the runs do get a bit samey, and for that reason I think Apollyon isn't a challenging character, but also don't think he's a very interesting one to play as either. He's more of those characters like Azazel that you play once in a while to maybe refresh your memory. Maybe you're like, okay, I'm feeling like using active items today, and then you decide to play the Apollyon, and I think he works well in that regard. And obviously I'm not saying that every character should be competitive and fun to play and challenging, but these are just my 2 cents on it and maybe how I feel about the character. So at this point he did not overthrow my absolute favorite character, Blue Baby, and he's just sitting there somewhere in the top 10, I would say, which is really like the bottom 3 whenever you have like 15 characters, but still, I would say he's an okay fun character to play as occasionally, but he's not the type of character that I could constantly play as. There are a few tricks though you can use with him, which I found that are really kind of helpful. And what happens if you get an active item which has an immediate effect, so something like Book of Revelations for example. If you use that item and then suck it up, you actually get 2 stacks. So when you use the Book of Revelations you get a Spirit Heart, and then when you use the Void active item you get another Spirit Heart. So that's maybe a good trick to keep in mind whenever you have an item that maybe adds something to you that's somewhat permanent. You can use the active item first and then actually use the Void to suck it up, because you're gonna get just another effect. But besides that fact, this run was actually really bad. I'm not sure how to point it out. It wasn't really bad, because I felt like we're doing enough damage throughout the way, but it was one of those runs that was just like, end my life now, because I just want to die, and you just can't die because you have so many ways to get held back, and the game doesn't let you die. And like, it was so mean. It was a mean run. I think that's the best way I can put it, and I was a bit frustrated playing through it, and I think this is something that happened quite a few times. But whenever you miss Harsh by like just a few seconds, when you enter every single dead end, or where you find every single dead end, when you obviously try not to get that, and to kind of top it off, what happened on the shoal floor, every single chest I opened and sack I opened contained troll bombs or super troll bombs, which was something that I felt like I had the curse of the troll bomb or something like that. But it was unreal. It was unreal how often that happened. If you maybe pay attention to it in the video, you can see it happening. But it was absolutely absurd, because I did this run in total was just absurd. And I think I've said absurd like 15 times in the last 2 minutes, but I really, it was one of those runs that you think you would enjoy, but you don't really. And like I said, I'm struggling to find words to describe it, so maybe I should stop at this point. We got Monstrous Lung early on, and I really like Monstrous Lung. I think it's a very unique and fun item to play as, and I also think it's a very strong item, because essentially what it does is, if you have some tear delay down, or tears up, depending how you look at it, you can actually charge it up quite fast, and you unleash like 10-20 shots, which if you're good at aiming, if you maybe don't have a super high knockback or shot speed, you can kill enemies relatively fast, and even bosses, just because bosses do have a larger hitbox, which means more tears hit them. And it's also useful against multiple mini enemies, because obviously each tier can hit a different one, which means that in total you're dealing more damage overall. But like any other item, which I think are balanced in some way, this item is also balanced in the way that if you get the shot speed, then you knock enemies back, which means that less enemies hit on average, which means that you're doing less damage. And there are also some rooms and enemy variants and just overall bosses which don't really work well against Monstrous Lung, because some rooms that have just a lot of enemies coming at you in different directions, and that's a problem with any charging item actually. You just can't kind of fend them off, just because they come at you from different directions and you can only shoot in one direction at once, and then you're kind of swarmed and then you take damage. And it seemed like a lot of those rooms happen on this daily, and that is of course something that you can't really control. Either you like Monstrous Lung or either you don't like it, but whenever you pick up an item, you full well know that you're gonna get some of these rooms, and they're quite hard to deal with. And sadly, because of just how Isaac works, sometimes you're gonna get difficult runs, sometimes they're gonna get easy runs, and this happened to be one of those where the items and the run in total just didn't match up, and things just weren't looking right. And a lot of rooms, like I said, were of the type where I just walked in and it seemed like the enemies reacted instantly, and when they reacted instantly, I didn't have the time to actually charge up and then shoot, and I just managed to get hit. And I think I didn't get hit this much since I've started playing the dailies, and my damage penalty on average when I started playing the dailies was like 10,000, and this one had 8,000, and I don't think I've gone below 10,000, above 10,000, depending how you look at it, ever since like my first 5 days of dailies. And again, it was a very, very terrible run in the sense that I played badly, not in the sense it was a bad run. But also on top of that, we didn't really get any damage up, so you can see that our damage is quite low. And an annoying thing about Apollyon as well is whenever you use the Void to suck up a passive item, you can get a very random stat distribution, which, because it gives you a random stat up or a stand down. And what can happen, even if you get stat up, like shot speed up in this situation, that can be really bad, because you have Monstrous Lung. You don't really want that, because less shots will hit on average the enemies you're trying to hit. But it also, what can happen, of course, it can take some of your damage away and can give you range, which is again something that's not really favorable whenever you have certain item combinations. So I would say Apollyon maybe doesn't really work that well for synergies, because I feel a lot of synergy value, or just item value in general, comes from you knowing what you're picking up and what you're getting in return. So maybe if you have a high shot speed, you say, okay, Ludovico technique is good in this situation, because obviously this stats, or this item and this stats synergize quite well. But if your shot speed is super low and maybe you can't afford to take it, then in that situation you'd be like, okay, maybe it's a better idea for me to not take Ludovico and this time just pass up on this particular synergy. And because with Void you don't really have the control over that, and obviously there's still some argument to be made that it's beneficial to use it, but sometimes it's gonna screw you over, and just because of that random stat distribution, it can really kind of mess you up in that situation. And I feel like a lot of things that could go wrong in this run did go wrong in this run. And like I said, the fact that I missed Hush was quite discouraging as well. I really thought that I could beat Boss Rush with my Voided Krampus's head and the Pac-Man, the Game Kid item, and I thought that would kind of give me some stopping power to kill enemies and bosses, but sadly it didn't seem to do enough. I finished Boss Rush around 26 minutes, and then I had 4 minutes to beat 2 of the floors. And also something, and maybe they're just anecdotal, I feel like the floors in Afterbirth Plus are larger on average. So like how many rooms are in the floor, I think there's more of them on average. And I don't know if this is just me maybe projecting, but I really feel like in the last 10 daily runs I've done, I've missed Hush 3 or 4 times, and I don't feel like I've missed Hush that often in Afterbirth. So I think it has to do with something with just maybe there are more large rooms as well in the level generation or something like that, but the floors definitely feel a bit longer because I seem to be struggling to get to Hush in some of these videos where I'm not super overpowered. But this is one of those runs where I would expect, at least in Afterbirth, for me to be fast enough to get to Hush. But like again, this is maybe just me projecting, or maybe I was tired and things felt slower than they actually are, and maybe a combination of those things, maybe because it's cold. I'm not really sure, but if maybe you've noticed, or maybe have some actual confirmation that the floors are larger, or maybe that if you feel like the floors are larger, please let me know, because I don't want to think I'm going crazy over here, and when there's no need to go crazy, I guess. But yeah, we are fighting Mega Satan here, and we had a very interesting choice, not an interesting choice, but we got Mega Blast in the Devil Deal when I teleported with the Joker card, and obviously the ideal thing here would be to suck it up with Void, but sadly I didn't have any Void charges, and because I learned from my previous videos that I shouldn't, when I feel weak and when I'm getting hit a lot, I shouldn't explore the Dark Room, because oftentimes you're gonna lose more points than you're gonna get. So I decided I will just fight Mega Satan in this situation, and I'll try to beat him with what I have. And because I didn't want to stack up my Void, because obviously even if I did want to stack up my Void, I couldn't in that situation, except maybe if I had some foreshadowing. But of course in that situation I just couldn't suck it up. I decided to take Mega Blast because I think it would be good against Mega Satan. I use it like on the second phase of the first phase, so when he starts spawning the sins, and it worked out pretty well. I essentially killed the first phase with just that item, and the second phase is not that difficult and it's quite easy to deal with, especially if you have a slowing effect like I do with Lil Gish. And because the Monstro Lunk is still a very good item in my opinion. With 6 damage we can just land a lot of shots, and I think that this shouldn't be too much of a problem, and it wasn't. I don't think I got hit past this point, but up until this point I would say I got hit like 50 times, and that's just bad. just not something that I'm really a fan of. But overall, I would still say that this daily was fun for a certain person, but not for me. For me it was, I'm not the type of person who likes to complain. Maybe it comes off that way in a video, but I'm just maybe trying to point out the mistakes I've been making and what I feel about the run in that situation. And I feel like definitely Afterbirth Plus has thrown me off just a little bit, but I still feel like I have it, I still feel like I can do better. And obviously this series is also about us trying to improve and get through the game the best we can. And surprisingly to me, I did finish 255th, which is actually much higher than I thought we would finish. I thought we were surely in like the top thousands or something like that. And I didn't think we would go into 4 digits, but definitely the bottom triple digits, like 800th place or something. So the fact that I was 255th does indicate that this run was extraordinarily difficult, which means that other people struggled with it as well. And I'm kind of glad that people did struggle with it, because that means that relative to them we are quite higher. So yeah, we did finish in that situation, and it wasn't that bad, it wasn't that good, but as it is what it is, that's what I always say. It is what it is, even with our high damage penalty. And thankfully, at least one thing I can always say, that my item penalty is under average, because I don't pick up certain items, just because I don't think they really work well in a lot of situations. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.